Hi, this is Kirk Davis, Executive Director of Camps. I'm here today with Randy Gardiner. He's been a member of Camps for over a decade and chairman of the board. And Randy is a business coach, and he gave a presentation some time ago to the Camps members on the reality of the lean journey. And I I haven't been able to forget this presentation, Randy. This has been very memorable to me. And you and I were just reviewing it, and I'm still amazed at how clearly I remembered because it was such an impressive and I think important presentation to the members of camps.
Yeah, well, it was a it was a great time in our company's history, and it was also fun to do for the camps organization.
Yeah, no, I appreciate this kind of education. I'm sure that this will be a valuable, training for executives, and that's what you do. You are a business coach,
That's right.
and in your career, and I think today they're going to get a taste and a flavor of what you bring, and this is a remarkable experience. So let's go ahead and take them through it.
All right, thanks, Kirk. So when Kirk and I first talked about this project, we thought the best way to do it would be to take a couple steps back to the presentation that I gave to at a camps technical session, and carve out the piece around the lean journey, because that seemed to really resonate with most of the audience that was there. And of course, it's a great story to tell. And that story to tell is my story as it relates to my lean journey. and so I'm going to take you through that lean journey and the reasons why and some of the events that happened during that time. And with the idea that CEOs and leaders that are thinking about the lean journey or are in it right now can relate to some of the things that I've gone through, and maybe not have to skin their knees as much as I did
There's some good
going through that.
lessons, really
Yeah.
good lessons you share throughout this presentation.
So first, a little background on the company, and we'll just dive right into it. So Red Dot it makes custom heating and air conditioning systems for heavy duty equipment, and I was the CEO there from the late '90s all the way through to 2016. And so we make heating and air conditioning systems for everything from Class 8 vehicles on road to the John Deere tractor, fire equipment, cotton pickers, hay balers, armored cars, and great, a lot of fun in that business. And we produced a lot of different component parts. We're a very vertically integrated manufacturer. So we took everything on the flat or length of tube or a coil of wires. And at the end of the day, we produced a heating and air conditioning products. And those, you might say, encompassed, encompassed a range of different components. At the time I left Red Dot, we had 5 locations nationally and internationally with about 600 employees. Many of you camps members that are down in the South End probably drive by 495 Andover Park East, where we're located, which is just north of the Costco there in the South Center area. At the time we began thinking about the lean journey, and why we thought about the lean journey is because we were serving world-class customers such as Freightliner and John Deere, Kobelco, New Holland, Western Star, Caterpillar, and those. And what had happened is the major OEMs like Freightliner and Mack and New Holland and others were bought by uh, automotive manufacturers and automotive companies. And so with that, they brought the automotive standards and automotive competitors, which essentially meant that our competitors were now very, very large and brought economies of scale that we had never experienced.
That's
So
a
the
that's a
expectation
oh, that's
on
a
us
game
as an
changer. Yeah.
organization.
Well,
Pardon, Kirk?
well, that's a game changer. I mean, your game changed right underneath you, it seems like.
Absolutely. And so at first you're in denial about that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but eventually your customers start explaining to you what their new expectations are, and they hire executives or talent from the automotive industry, and all of a sudden quality, the delivery, the cost expectations
Mm.
were something, from Mars when we uh, first encountered it. And that led to inspections by the OEMs and new standards like ISO 9000, which we hadn't heard of, total quality management,
Oh,
the
wow.
Deming Award.
Yeah.
And finally, their cost inspections, they dove right into our bills of materials and had stopwatches out in the plant and wanted to time our,
Wow.
all of our processes. Yeah, it was crazy. But at the end of the day, we had lost some business. Our margins were being pressed, and some of our sales executives were coming back and telling us, you know what, the people that they are doing business with, their factories look different than ours, and their whole processing methods. I mean, we've got to come up to the 20th or 21st century standards. And so I toured some plants and so forth, and oh my gosh, they were right. Where we had looked back at our productivity in terms of sales per person, and it had been flat,
Mm.
essentially no change for decades. So yeah, we hadn't improved our process, and the world-class expectation was in the $200,000 per employee versus the
Wow.
$100,000 per employee. So yeah, we needed some change. So it was a wake-up call.
Oh, man.
We needed a new vision and strategy. So I heard from other clients, or I should say customers at that time, that we ought to go look at the carrier organization because they've been on this journey for quite some time.
Mm.
So we looked at the carrier organization, we made contact with them, and they were happy to give us access to some of their plants around the United States. We went down to Albany, Georgia, and saw one of their manufacturing facilities there. And oh my goodness, this was a complete eye opener in terms of the way in which they ordered their manufacturing plant, the way in which they didn't have lots of inventory stacked up between processes, the cleanliness,
Wow.
it was just breathtaking. So of course we asked, how did you get there?
Yeah.
And they said, well, we have a relationship with the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and they have a lean institute there that we send all of our managers and leaders to. So that's what we did. We contacted the University of Tennessee, and we sent our vice president of operations and 7 other people to the University of Tennessee for their 10-day training workshop on lean. And they brought back all of this knowledge and these ideas. And within 6 months, it was a total failure.
Oh, my word. Jeez.
And so,
But you just talked to
I
Carrier.
mean, there was so much pushback from our organization
Oh,
and confusion and so forth. And this is like learning, martial arts by a how-to book.
yeah.
You know, it just doesn't, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
And so what I found out that is lean is unnatural. It
Yeah.
is not something that people do, just naturally. It requires a different thinking and a different approach to many of the processes.
Mm.
The other thing is I underestimated the culture. And you've probably heard this saying that culture eats strategy for lunch.
Yes.
Uh, that was so true.
So true.
trying to change that culture, you couldn't just tell them once, because people are creatures of habit.
Yeah.
We all fall into the path of least resistance, or the thing that is easiest to do, and we develop routines that are ours, and breaking those requires a major shift.
Yes.
And what we really understood then is we needed a coach or a consultant to help us through this in the long run. And so I was introduced and knew of a gentleman, John Sutter. He was the one actually who used to work for Red Dot back in the 80s, and he'd gone to Boeing, and Boeing had made them their lean specialist, and he went to Japan and studied with Taiichi Ono and his disciples,
Mm.
and actually designed the first moving line for Boeing.
Oh, okay.
And
Wow.
so he was
He was good.
very knowledgeable in that.
Yeah.
And so called John, and we were friends, and he came down, and and so he went through our factory on a factory tour and looked for the 7 or the 8 wastes that lean looks for: defects in motion and transportation and inventory and waiting and overproduction and all these things. And he came back and reported back to our executive staff that we were a huge wasteland in our
Oh.
factory.
You didn't expect to
And
hear that drastic
yeah,
of
he actually used more colorful language, but I'll just keep it at that.
it.
And
Can you
he
imagine?
pointed to one of the columns out in our factory, and he says, you know, from that column this way, which was about 30% of our factory, he said, you don't need it. You can do
Wow.
everything you need to do in 60 to 65% of the factory that we had. And of course, we're in disbelief and all the rest of this stuff, but we're also, and I'm mindful of the competition we're up against and the pressure on our margins and the survival of our
Yeah.
company. So we went out to lunch, and I asked him if he would help us, and he said, I will, on one condition. He says, you must do everything I say.
Ouch. Ouch.
And for a CEO to abdicate power
Mm-hmm.
to a consultant, but I trusted John. I mean, that was a big moment. But
Yeah.
when you're put in a corner and grasping, yeah. So I said, okay, I'll do it. Which was a great move, but it was a leap of faith, and sometimes that just comes into play. So employee engagement was really critical. Obviously, you need everybody to be engaged, and the way we did that is we said no jobs would be lost through this lean effort. If we saved, they would go to work in another department that needed help in making the transition. We also established a lean office, which essentially said to the organization, we're serious. We're structurally going to change our organization to include an element along with accounting and sales and production called lean, because we're so committed to it. And then we also committed to a monthly rapid improvement workshops, or as they call lean events. And essentially, this is the foundation for changing our culture. But that wasn't the first aha moment. The first event was actually designed for shock and awe.
Oh,
And I was told, John told me, he said, Randy, this is what it takes for
right.
people to make a transition in their mind, is you need to destabilize the routines, the rituals, the habits. You need to destabilize that. And in our life, when we have things that come into our life that happen miraculously, we change the way we do things because of the impact. And so
That's
he
right.
needed to make a huge impact, and that was taking equipment that was huge and lining it up. Moving it was the first big deal. We had brought in an industrial forklift. These are machines that hadn't been moved in decades.
Yeah.
And we brought in an industrial forklift, and we moved those, and we put them close to one another so inventory couldn't pile up in between and all that. Leap of faith. And reduced a work area from about 7,000 square feet to 16 or 1,700 square
Oh,
feet,
wow.
producing just what we needed. And also sent a message to the organization that everything is movable. There are no, as we like to say in lean, there's no monuments
Ah,
that can't be moved. And so what that amounted to, after a few months of lean, we saved and freed up 15,000 square feet the first 15,000 square feet of space that we didn't need, and went on, and then we imagined the unimaginable, and said, okay, on top of that 15,000 square feet, how about shop lead time? Cut that from 3 weeks. That means the time that we push the button for production to start and the time the product goes out the door, it used to take us 3 weeks. Within a
Yeah.
year, it took us actually, I want to say, within about 2 years. It took us 2 years to get to that, but it meant that the customer could change their mind up to Monday morning
Yeah.
and Friday get exactly what they want. Whereas
Wow.
in the previous cycle, uh, we would be producing what we planned 3 weeks ago, whether they needed it or not, and we'd either be short and have to scramble, or we would have extra inventory, finished inventory for a unique customer, and have to put it on the shelf and be at risk that hopefully they're going to order that again.
Wow.
So, and then we we unplugged the shop MRP system from from driving our production. Won't get into that. That's a long story. We increased inventory turns by 18%, and along the way, we found that including leadership, meaning leadership, you actually see some pictures here, me in the middle, actually getting involved with the lean process. It breeds in continuous improvement and inspired participation, and and broke down silos and so forth. So it also breeds this culture of lean improvement when we have now the methods and the knowledge to understand how to uh, make your process more efficient and take waste out of it. And the whole team's knowledgeable about that and enthusiastically um, uh, being part of it. Um, it just builds on itself, and this flywheel of innovation and participation continues. The fun part is that we put lean to the test during the 2004 in the Iraqi war. These were our military vehicles made out of aluminum and canvas that were being blown away by roadside bombs.
Oh gosh.
And the Army came to us and said, hey, we need to put armor around all of these to protect our soldiers. But when they did that in Iraq, it created an oven. And in
Oh,
the 130-degree temperatures out in the
can't even
out in the field, it would get up to 150, 160 degrees
oh,
inside that Humvee, and the soldiers couldn't stay in there. They'd come out and then they get shot.
oh,
So the Army asked us to produce aftermarket installations that would bring the temperature down. You just can't take that much heat out of in that environment. What we brought it down to 100 degrees versus 140, so the soldiers could survive that. It was in fact very comfortable sounding,
wow.
believe it or not. But they kept them behind armor, and in doing so, I mean the designs and the systems weren't anything to write home about. They were practical and got the job done.
Mm.
But we made these systems for Humvees. We trained over 120 service people to install and
Mm.
service these HVAC systems. We made 30,000 systems in 18 months
Oh
and
wow.
flew those into Iraq for installation to keep our soldiers behind armor. It was one of the best experiences in my career.
Wow.
And it was also very, very rewarding to know that you're keeping soldiers safe. And this was a picture that was sent to us from one of our employees' sons, who was actually working on one of the Humvees and wrote home and told mom and dad that Red Dot had come to his place of employment in Iraq, and he was grateful for that. So great
Oh,
story.
amazing. Yeah.
The results are, as I mentioned earlier, that that flat chain of sales per employee made a dramatic turnaround in in the following years after putting lean in place. That little spike that you see under the world class there, that's for another military project that run by contract. but you can just put the trend line, and our
Yeah.
productivity and cost savings were fantastic. Also, our quality record, here, oops, let me go back here once. Our quality record was also very impressive in the fact that we were at nearly 2,000 parts per million that were defective. That's an automotive standard. You know, we got to learn how to be automotive suppliers.
Yeah.
And we brought that down within a few years to 275 ppm. And that's 99.9725% good. So,
Wow. It's hard
yeah.
to
So
imagine all the
that
differences.
was our lean journey. And where it extended to is here's the future. We started taking that mindset and we put it into a smart line. This smart line design gives us, which is now you can see in many factories, even in the camps organization.
Yeah.
And what we did is we took that new information and we were able to apply it by taking product, and instead of passing one product on to the next person to do the next process, we had an employee build the entire product by going around this assembly table start to finish, which allowed us to be much more flexible,
Whole different
allowed the
approach. Yeah.
employee to learn the entire process and use some of the smart tools to help build quality into the product. So
That's great.
um, that that's my story on my lean
Great
journey,
story.
Kirk.
Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, so if you don't mind, we'll kind of go back away from the share screen. If
Okay,
you
that'd be great.
stop sharing screen, then we'll come back a little bigger here. And you know, I mean, you just rattled off so many lean terms through that whole presentation, like it was second nature.
Well, after doing it, you know, and this is lean is a top-down initiative.
Yeah,
It can't be. There's a lot of great stuff that can be grassroots, and it was grassroots when you have trained your workforce to use the lean tools and approach it, use the lean methodology and so forth. They come up with great ideas
mm.
and great innovations as part of the process, but changing their habits and instilling the new knowledge and so forth has got to be mandated from the top down, that this is a new strategy for our organization.
So it's something I've heard you mention is they have to comply ultimately with the new culture, the new way, the new lean.
Right.
They don't really fit into the organization.
Well, that's true. And so we said that nobody would be fired and so forth, but truth be told is that there are some folks that just don't fit and have developed habits and mindsets that
They're not happy. Yeah.
no, they're not happy, and they're adverse to change, and it makes them very uncomfortable
Yeah.
and anxious, and that starts so it starts the little black rain cloud circling around in some
There you
production
go.
areas or even office areas.
Yeah.
And you find out that they would be better off working for another company that allowed them to develop new habits at their company. And so you help them move along to where they are actually where they're going to be happier
Yeah.
and happiest. So yeah, we did lose people. That we had, in fact, a production manager that threw his hat down and said, I can't be part of this. And we
Yeah.
said, okay, understood, but this is the direction that the ship is headed,
Yeah.
and I wish you the best of luck.
Yeah.
And
Those
so
are
yeah, that happens.
those are realities, and I think it's the culture change that you mentioned, but then the dramatic increase in sales per employee. I mean, it looked. I mean, it's hard to imagine a big company like this turning all of their operations in such a way that sales per employee became so high.
Well, it speaks to the theory, and you know, you hear these theories from obviously from the consultants like me, now that I'm a consultant, and and you kind of go, yeah, I'm being sold, but I wasn't, you know, I was kind of backed into a corner, and I had to believe,
Yep.
and by putting my trust in somebody that I did trust and I did believe in, Yeah, I mean, when you embrace the fact that you don't need the inventory, that you can
Mm,
put processes in place that doesn't produce rejects, that doesn't waste time, put inventory in between
yeah,
stations, but actually goes as quickly as possible through the production process. It was like magic.
yeah,
Um, and the employees loved it because they were able to see the improvements and the results at a production level. And also then at the corporate level, I had the bigger statistics, but even within the work centers, they could see once we removed all the stuff that wasn't necessary, we gave them the tools to produce what they needed. We had a scorecard that indicated how long it took to produce their product,
yeah,
and they were able to meet that and exceed it and get involved in changing the process because they saw that, that's a waste. Why are we doing that? Because according to our lean uh, consultants or senseis, if you want to say,
yeah.
or our lean office, it's not necessary. And
Mm,
some of the times we experiment and let them keep their teddy bear off to the side of inventory. Okay, let's just try this one time without, you
yeah,
know, and we'll let you keep the inventory in case you need it, or we'll
yeah.
let you keep the tool or the whatever in case you need it. But let's try it this way and see what happens.
And they didn't
Nine
need it.
times out of 10, or even more than that, it wasn't necessary once you demonstrated it to the
So
people that you.
they had to become believers at the same time.
They did it. I mean, there's nothing like being shown or demonstrated or participating in process. And it was their win. And when they win and they get the positive
Yeah.
reinforcement, guess what they want to do?
Oh
They
yeah.
want, they want to do it again. They want to do more of it.
Yeah,
And then you
yeah.
find
People.
yourself as a leader, maybe standing in the way sometimes. Well, I don't know if we should go that far.
Right, right.
And then you find yourself actually uh, being led by them, using all of the knowledge and the training that you've invested in and so forth. And it wasn't, I'm not going to say it was inexpensive. It was in that actually the money that was laid out, there's a lot of money laid
Yeah,
out for this teaching, but it came back in the end and revolutionized the way in which we actually produced our product. And we took it into the office space. I don't want to uh, uh, have this conversation not mention that there's an incredible amount of waste in the administrative
yeah.
arenas, engineering arenas, purchasing arenas,
So you took
human
it
resources
into the
arena,
office, so to
customer
speak.
services arena. All of those have their own little habits and their ways of doing things that are unnecessary or can be done differently and more productively. And you can take lean into what they call white collar lean, take that
Yeah,
into the office space and
yeah.
make some dramatic improvements.
Something I've heard you mention is the thinking behind the theory. So sometimes there was a getting behind the thinking behind the theory, but then how that translates into practices on the ground. And I thought I really like that thinking, theory, and practices, and how those three work together.
Yeah, and along the way, there were visuals that were brought in, and also exercises that were brought in to
Ah,
demonstrate. And one of those was a flashlight. There's a Lego exercise and then a flashlight exercise where you have maybe six people sitting around a table, and you ask them. There's also a paper airplane exercise,
okay.
and when they start out in the production sequence, we start in the way we currently do things today, in batches, so
Yeah.
forth. We're batch oriented people, and then we see the consequences of changes in order. The
Mm.
customer changes their mind, and we're already
Already in
3/4 of the way
process.
through what do we do now? Or we see the consequences of a defect.
Ah,
uh, Defect, well, that creates a gap in the line, obviously. Well, what happens if the supplier is late? Because we also had in that room sitting around the table, we had suppliers,
okay.
and then we purposely said, okay, now don't deliver this one because maybe one of your employees didn't come to work or something.
Yeah.
And so you saw what type of impact each of those wastes had in an exercise, and it became obvious to people going. It was almost like a card trick. you know that, I'm not so sure about that. And
Yeah.
but when we demonstrated it, that wasn't a card trick. There was actually reasons why it stopped it and benefits to doing it in a lean fashion. Those, besides the theory, that thinking as applied to a simple exercise and then translated out into the customer service department, the assembly department, the fabrication department, the sub-assembly department, we could see how those principles played out and also helped eliminate unnecessary inventory, eliminate unnecessary space. And we had one of the biggest challenges. We would create all this space, 5,000 square feet of empty space. And we had to actually put crime scene tape around
Oh,
it
to keep.
to keep people out because, people, again, it's another human thing. They like to, if you see empty space, they want to fill it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they'd find waste in their production area, and they go, well, where do I put it?
There's some empty space over
I'll
here.
put it over here.
You know, this occurred to me as I was listening to your presentation that old and slow loses opportunities where new and fast, meaning, the company after lean and it became faster, more productive, those lead times shrunk down. It seems like there was opportunities. People wanted to do business with you. And
Well, it's just like we do today with the amazing performance of Amazon. Is that and you've probably experienced this too, is where you order something and they say, well, it'll be here on Thursday, and all of a sudden it's there on Wednesday. You go,
yeah,
wow,
yeah,
that was cool.
the wow factor.
I want to do that again.
Yeah, that's right.
And what you find and what I found in business is that the people who buy your product are people.
Yes,
And they make decisions and preferences because they have experiences.
that's right.
And when they like dealing, who wants to go up to their boss and say, hey, guess what? ABC supplier didn't deliver again.
Yeah.
And now we have to fly them across the United States and it's going to cost us. And the boss says, how in the heck?
Why are we doing business with them? Yeah.
Exactly. And so the suppliers that deliver exactly on time, because that's part of lean, if you deliver early, you create the waste of inventory.
Mm-hmm.
So if you deliver exactly on time and you meet the goals, and this is another one, of course, oftentimes they incentivize their purchasing people to have suppliers that meet their expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do, they get a little chevron on their shoulder.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Guess what? They're going to deal with the suppliers that put chevrons on their shoulder.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's so cool. This has really been great, Randy. I want to thank you for sharing this, and I can't wait to share it out with everybody and let them know. And so if somebody wants to get in contact with you, how do they do that?
Well, it's I'm at Randy Gardiner, spelled with an I, Gardiner, Randy at randygardiner.com. And or you can go to randygardiner.com, my website, and contact me that way. I'd love to just talk and help any camps manufacturer or associate if they're interested in my lean experience and now as a growth coach, the other things that I have to offer. Love to have a conversation.
I agree. Well, contact Randy, and I really appreciate you walking us through the realities of the lean journey. And I hope all of us continue to, improve in that journey as we go. So.
Me too. I'm on your team.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Randy.
My pleasure. Thanks, Kirk.
Talk to you later.
All
Bye.
right, bye-bye.